In this part, we discuss about female reproductive system. So, female reproductive system comprises a pair of ovaries, a pair of oviduct, uterus, then vagina, then glands like a vestibular gland and that is mammary gland, and last is a external genitalia, that is vulva. So, female reproductive system having what? The primary sex organ, that is paired organ, that is ovary, and tubular structure, that is fallopian tube or oviduct, then uterus, then vagina, and external genitalia, vulva, and glands like a vestibular gland and mammary glands. So from this diagram we discuss about the female reproductive system. So in female reproductive system, ovary acts as primary sex organs. So ovaries are solid oval and almond shaped organ which is attached to the abdominal cavity and it also attached to the uterus. If you are able to recall, in case of males, the primary sex organ, testes, are located extra-abdominal, but in case of females, the primary sex organs are present inside the abdomen. Ovaries are present lateral lower part of the pelvis and near the kidneys. Size of ovaries are 3 cm in length, 1.5 cm in breadth and 1 cm in thickness. So ovaries are attached with the abdomen by ligament mesovarium and ovaries attached with the uterus by ovarian ligament. So what is the basic function of ovary? Ovary is the primary sex organ of the female reproductive system and ovaries produces female gamete, that is egg cell, or we called it as secondary oocyte, and it also produces hormones like female sex hormones like estrogen, progesterone, relaxin, then activin and inhibin. Okay, such type of hormones are secreted by ovary. Then the second part of this female reproductive system is fallopian tube, or also called as oviduct. So this is 10 to 12 centimeter long tubular muscular tube structure, okay, which comprises 3 main parts, that is infundibulum, the funnel shaped structure. Proximally, it is near to proximal part of this tube, that is fallopian tube, is infundibulum, which is near to the ovary, and its opening is called as ostium. So opening of infundibulum is a ostium, and that ostium contains finger-like projection, and that is called as fimbriae. For example, this part is called as infundibulum. Funnel part is called as infundibulum, and finger-like projections are called as fimbriae. So what is the function of this fimbriae? They are able to create suction, and because of that, egg released from ovary are transport from ovary towards the uterus. Okay, so then second part of the fallopian tube is a long tube, that part is called as ampulla, and this is the site for fertilization. In ampulla region, fertilization takes place. And the third part, that is isthmus, that is distal part of this fallopian tube, which opens into the uterus. So isthmus or cornua. So this is the last part of fallopian tube which opens into this uterus. Okay, so what is the function of fallopian tube or oviduct? So it carries egg cell from ovary to the uterus, and it is also a site for in this fallopian tube, ampulla is act as site for fertilization. Now the third and most important part of female reproductive system is uterus. So it is oval shape organ and pouch-like structure, sac-like structure, and size of uterus is 7.5 centimeter in length, 5 centimeter in width and 2.5 centimeter in thickness. Okay, so internally this uterus is having 3 layers. The outermost layer of uterus is called as perimetrium, which are thick and protective in function. Then the middle is a myometrium, which possesses muscles, and during the parturition, because of this muscular contractions, parturition is possible, and that in vibrations or contraction is causes in this myometrium layer and that causes the labor. Okay, and the last, that is innermost layer, is a endometrium. Okay, so endometrium is highly vascularized, in which blood supply, rich blood supply is there, and the endometrium, thickening of endometrium layer is changed during every month at the menstrual cycle. So endometrium is the innermost layer, which is changed every month during menstrual cycle. Myometrium is middle layer, which is produces from muscles and is help in parturition, and that it produces the vigorous contractions and helps in parturition. And then perimetrium is the outermost layer. So this uterus is having 3 major parts, that is upper dome shaped part is called as a fundic region. Implantation of the embryo takes place in this blastocyst. Implantation of blastocyst takes place in fundic region. Then middle part, that is the body, and last part is called as a cervix part. Cervix is a 2.5 centimeter tube-like structure. Okay, so what is the function of uterus? So implantation, gestation, all this process takes place in uterus. Implantation of that blastocyst takes place here, and placenta is formed in uterus. Okay, so this is very important organ in case of female reproductive system. Then cervix is the last part of this uterus, and cervix is a tube-like structure, 2.5 centimeter. Its opening, it having 2 openings, that is internal os and the os, and this is external os. So internal os, that is open into the body part of uterus, and external os, that is open into the vagina. Okay, and last part of this female reproductive system, that is vagina. Okay, so this vagina is 7 to 9 centimeter long tube-like structure. Okay, vagina is having 3 layers, that mucosal inner layer. Inner layer is produces from mucosal epithelium, and that is stratified non-keratinized epithelium, which stores glycogen, and then middle is a muscular layer, and outer is adventitious layer, adventitia layer. Okay, so vagina is having vaginal opening. Okay, so this opening is called as vaginal orifice or vaginal opening, which is partially covered by membrane, that is hymen. Okay, so this cervix having 2 openings, that is internal os. Os means orifice. Okay, the opening. So internal os opens into the body, and external os opens into the vagina. And vagina having a vaginal rugae. Then vagina is a 7 to 9 centimeter tubular structure. So vagina is having 3 layers, that is innermost is mucosal layer, that contains mucosal epithelial cells, which contains what? That is stratified non-keratinized epithelium, which stores the glycogen. Middle is a muscular layer, and outer is the adventitia layer. So in vagina there is no any glands present, but whatever the mucus is secreted by cervix is collected in vagina. And hymen is the covering, partial covering of vaginal orifice. So this is the part of female reproductive system. The remaining part we discuss in next video. So female reproductive system having primary sex organ, ovary, fallopian tube, which is divided into 3 parts, that is infundibulum, funnel-like structure, infundibulum, then ampulla is the site for fertilization, isthmus okay, which opens into the uterus, and uterus is also called as womb, and uterus is having three part, that is fundic region, body and cervix. Uterus contains three layers, that is outer is a perimetrium, middle is a myometrium and innermost is a endometrium. So myometrium layer is supports for labor. Okay, so vigorous contraction is because of this muscular layer, myometrium, and then cervix, which having two openings, then vaginal part is there. Okay, so vagina is 7 to 9 centimeter tubular structure. Okay, and it is partially covered by hymen. Okay, thank you. Now we discuss the external genitalia of female. Okay, so external genitalia comprises or commonly called as vulva, and it contains following structures like first part is the mons pubis. Anterior most part of vulva is called as mons pubis, and mons pubis forms a cushion, okay, and it is produces from fatty tissues, and it also contains hair. It is protective in nature. So mons pubis is produces from fatty acids. The next is the clitoris. Clitoris is produces from erectile tissues, and it is homologous to penis in case of male, but it is different from penis as its size is very small as compared to the penis, and it is not having any passage. So in case of penis, there is a passage through which urethra is passes, but clitoris is a solid structure. Okay, so its size is small and it is a solid structure. This is the difference between penis and clitoris. But why they are called as homologous? Because they both contain erectile tissues. The next is the labia majora. So this labia majora part, this part is labia majora, and it forms the boundary of vulva, and it is produces from large fleshy fold of skin. It also contains hair, and it contains sebaceous glands. Okay, so labia majora is a large fleshy fold of skin, and it contains sebaceous gland and hairs also. Then inside of this labia majora, labia minora is present, and it is small fold of skin, small fleshy fold of skin, and it is fused, it is posteriorly fused and forms the fourchid structure, and it also contains sebaceous gland. So inside of this labia minora, vestibule is present, and that vestibule having two openings, that is urethral opening through which urethra is opened, and vaginal opening. Okay, that is vaginal orifice, and this vaginal orifice is covered by membrane, that is hymen. Okay, and two glands are present in vestibule, that is pair of gland, that is Bartholin's gland, which is homologous to bulbourethral gland or Cowper's gland in case of males. Now we discuss the glands present in female, that is mammary gland. Actually this is accessory gland, and this gland is essential for the synthesis of milk after parturition. Okay, so mammary gland commonly called as breast. It is a exocrine gland. Why it is called as a exocrine gland? Because it contains duct. It is compound gland, tubulosaccular gland, also tubules and sac-like structure, glandular structure. So it contains glandular tissue and fats also. Okay, so mammary glands or this breast are present on chest region. Okay, so it is modified Schwann glands, and it contains the alveoli, and alveoli is the major site for synthesis of milk, and the one more function of alveoli is the storage of milk. So it is lie, this mammary gland are lie over pectoralis major muscles. So it is present in chest region, and breast size determines because of fats, how much fats are present in breast. So each breast have, this is the structure of breast, and breast have lobes, number of lobes, that is 15 to 20 mammary lobes are present, and inside of that mammary lobes alveoli, which are milk producing structure is present in this mammary lobes. So alveoli synthesize milk, and this milk is then transferred from alveoli to the mammary duct, and from mammary duct transfer to the next tubule structure, that is mammary ampulla, and from mammary ampulla it is transferred to the lactiferous duct, and through this lactiferous duct it is sucked out. Okay, so milk is produced after parturition for the development of baby. Okay, so this is the mammary gland, which are having mammary lobes which contain a structure that is called as alveoli, and alveoli synthesizes milk. That structure is very important. Okay, so alveoli synthesize milk. This milk is transferred towards this mammary duct, and from this it transferred to the mammary ampulla where the milk is stored, then this lactiferous duct, and from that lactiferous duct it woos out. Thank you. Now we discuss about the internal structure of ovary. So ovaries are intra-abdominal. That means ovaries are placed inside the abdominal cavity, and ovaries are small, oval and almond shaped primary sex organ in case of female, and ovaries produces female gametes, that is secondary oocyte and hormones. So outer covering of ovary is produces from layer, that is tunica albuginea, and this is the protective covering. Inside of this tunica albuginea, two layers are there, and that is cortex and medulla. Cortex layer, denser layer, and that is produces from reticular connective tissues, and inside of this cortex less denser layer, that is medulla, and which is produces from areolar connective tissue. So inside in cortex layer, developing different stages of follicles are present. Follicles are present in this cortex region. So these follicles, that is primordial follicles, primary follicles, secondary follicles. Okay, so this during the development of female fetus, the primordial follicles are transferred from endoderm of yolk sac into the ovary of female fetus. Now in every month after puberty, every month this primary follicle starts to develop. Okay, in every month only one follicle is developed, that is this primary follicle is converted into secondary follicle. Number of cells produces around this, that is called as the follicular cells. So primary follicle converted into secondary follicle convert into the tertiary follicle, and tertiary follicle having a cavity. Characteristic feature of the tertiary follicle, it have a cavity, and that is called as antrum. Now this tertiary follicle is again converted, mature in size, and it converts into the graphene follicle. So inside of this graphene follicle, secondary oocyte is present. Now we see the structure of graphene follicle. So this is the secondary oocyte, and in secondary oocyte are covered by follicular cells, and that is called as discus proligerus. And this discus proligerus and the secondary oocyte surrounded by a layer that is called as membrana granulosa. This is also a follicular cells, and this membrana granulosa as having a cavity here. Cavity is present, and that's why this membrana granulosa is having two layers, that is theca externa, outer layer, and theca interna. Yes, and that cavity is not a empty cavity, that is contain a liquid that is called as liquor follicule. So this cavity is called as antrum, and this secondary oocyte is not float inside this cavity, so it is attached to this membrana granulosa by cumulus oophorus. Now understand this graphene follicle. The name graphene follicle is because of scientists. So graphene follicle contains secondary oocyte, and this secondary oocyte contains the layer of follicular cells that is called as discus proligerus, and this discus proligerus on plus this secondary oocyte is connected with membrana granulosa by cumulus oophorus, and this cavity is called as antrum, and cavity is having a liquid which is secreted by follicular cells. That's why the name is liquor follicule. Okay, and membrana granulosa having two layers, outer called as a theca externa and inner is called as theca interna. Okay, now this graphene follicle during the menstrual cycle at the ovulation period, this graphene follicle ruptures and the secondary oocyte is releases. So this is the secondary oocyte which is released after this ovulation period. Okay, secondary oocyte releases at the 14th day. We'll see detail about this menstrual cycle in next videos. So graphene follicle ruptures, yes, and after the rupture of graphene follicles, this secondary oocyte is releases, and now this ruptured follicle, graphene follicle, is called as corpus hemorrhagus. Okay, why it is called as hemorrhagus? Because this tissues, blood cells are ruptured here. That's why it is called as corpus hemorrhagus. It is the first stage of this follicle, rupturing follicle, corpus hemorrhagus. So ovulation, this is the ovulation period through which in that period this secondary oocyte is released from graphene follicle. Okay, now this corpus hemorrhagus are converted into the corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum is actually a temporary endocrine gland, and it produces hormone, and that hormone is essential for maintaining pregnancy. Okay, and that hormone is progesterone. So corpus luteum, corpus hemorrhagus converted into the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum is temporary endocrine gland. It produces progesterone hormone. And now this corpus luteum, if fertilization is not takes place, so corpus luteum is also called as yellow body, commonly yellow body, and if fertilization is not takes place, then this corpus luteum degenerate, and this degenerating corpus luteum is now called as corpus albicans, and that is present inside the ovary as a white scar. Okay, this is the internal structure of ovary in which developing follicles are present. Okay, so in every month only one follicle is mature, and that shows the stages like a primary follicle, secondary follicle, tertiary follicle, and then graphene follicle. And in ovulation, the graphene follicles rupture, and through which secondary oocyte is released. So this is the secondary oocyte. And this ruptured follicle is called as corpus hemorrhagus, and now this corpus hemorrhagus is converted into the corpus luteum. Corpus luteum secretes very important hormone, and that is important for maintaining pregnancy, that is progesterone. And if in case fertilization is not there, then there is no need of this corpus luteum or this hormone progesterone. So after some days this corpus luteum is degenerate and it converts into the corpus albicans.